Ethan Cole didn't talk much at work. He was one of those people who blended into the background, polite, steady, dependable. The kind of man who kept the office lights running, the vents quiet, and the coffee machine working. His blue uniform, with a small stitched name tag that said Ethan, was as familiar to the building staff as the faint hum of the air conditioning. Most people didn't notice him. He didn't mind. After everything that had happened, invisibility was easier. Every evening around 6, when the executives had gone home and the hallways echoed with silence, Ethan pushed his maintenance cart past the executive daycare. That's where he first saw the twins. Two small boys with matching dark hair and solemn eyes, sitting motionless in the corner while a nanny paced nearby, frustrated and exhausted. Leo, "Asher, I can't do this anymore," the woman snapped one evening, voice cracking. "You never speak. You just sit there like statues. This isn't normal." Ethan froze by the glass door. The boys didn't move, didn't blink. Their faces were pale, their expressions empty. Something about that stillness struck him hard in the chest, and it was too familiar. He'd seen it before. In his daughter Emma after the accident. Back then, Emma had been 8. One moment she was laughing in the back seat, the next silence. The car crash took her hearing and her voice. For months after, she wouldn't respond to anyone, not even him. Ethan had felt helpless, watching his bright, talkative girl vanish into a quiet world he didn't know how to reach. Until one day she handed him a drawing. A small bird, trapped but looking upward. That was how he learned his daughter was still there, just silent, waiting for someone to understand her differently. Now, looking at Leo and Asher, Ethan saw that same quiet pain. The nanny stormed out, phone in hand, muttering something about quitting. Ethan should have kept walking. He wasn't trained for this. But the sight of those two boys sitting so still, as if afraid to exist, made him stop. He took a slow breath, pushed open the daycare door, and said softly, "Hey there. I'm Ethan. I fix things around here." No reaction. "That lady, she was wrong, you know," he continued gently. "You're not strange. You're just scared, and that's okay." One of the boys blinked. The other shifted slightly, eyes flicking toward him. Ethan didn't move closer. He just nodded and sat down on the floor across the room. He didn't talk again. He didn't have to. He just sat there for a few minutes, fixing nothing at all, before standing and leaving. As he closed the door behind him, he heard it. A small exhale, like a breath finally released. That night, at home in his small apartment, Ethan sat at his workbench. The tools were laid out neatly. Files, small chisels, scraps of metal, and his torch. Emma was asleep in the next room, her hearing aid resting on the nightstand. Ethan picked up a piece of smooth brass and began to shape it. A small figurine, an anchor this time. Something steady, something to hold on to. He didn't plan it. He just worked until the metal cooled and the edges were soft beneath his fingertips. When he was done, he set the anchor on the table and stared at it. Maybe, he thought, someone else needed this more than he did. The next day, he left the anchor on the daycare floor near the twins. He didn't say anything. He didn't even look at them directly. He fixed a vent, wiped a window, and left. When he returned the following evening, the anchor was gone, so he made another one. A small star this time. Then a bird. Then wings, each day a new figurine. Each day the boys waited. A little less stiff, a little more alive. By the end of the week, they'd begun leaving drawings in return. Tiny sketches done in pencil on scrap paper. The first was of an anchor. Then a star. Then a bird in flight. Ethan smiled when he saw them. They were speaking back to him, just not with words. The twins' mother, Grace Reynolds, was the last person Ethan expected to meet. She was everything he wasn't. Confident, sharp, perfectly put together in her tailored red suit. Grace was the company's chief financial officer, known for her calm control and relentless efficiency. She'd built her life on order and precision, but at home, and in her heart, nothing felt ordered anymore. After her husband had left 2 years earlier, their twin sons had stopped speaking. First for days, then weeks, then months. Therapists had tried. Specialists had come and gone. Grace had done everything she could think of. Nothing worked. She came to the daycare one afternoon after another. Nanny quit, expecting more silence and disappointment. Instead, she saw her son sitting on the floor, quietly sketching, and Ethan sitting nearby, his blue uniform smudged with dust. Watching them with a small, patient smile, Grace blinked. "They're drawing?" Ethan stood quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry, ma'am. I was fixing the vent and—" "They don't usually do this," Grace interrupted softly. Her voice shook. "They haven't drawn in over a year." Ethan looked at the twins, then back at her. "They started last week. I left them a few things I made. I think it helped." Grace crouched beside her sons. "You did this?" she whispered to them. Leo held up a small metal bird. "He makes them," he said quietly. It was the first word she'd heard from him in 12 months. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. She looked at Ethan, stunned. "How?" Ethan shook his head. "I just listened differently." From that day, Grace asked Ethan to keep visiting. Not as maintenance, but as someone who somehow understood her children. He refused payment. "I don't want money," he said simply. "Just let me help." And so he did. Every evening after work, Ethan spent an hour with the twins, showing them how to mold soft wire into shapes, or how to sand metal until it gleamed. Emma often came along, her quiet laughter brightening the room. She couldn't hear the boys, but somehow they all communicated, through gestures, drawings, smiles, and shared silence. For the first time in years, Grace began to hope. One evening, as Ethan gathered his tools, Grace lingered. The office lights had dimmed and the city outside shimmered through the glass walls. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You've given me my sons back." Ethan hesitated. They were never gone. They just needed someone patient enough to wait. Grace smiled softly. "You're a good man, Ethan Cole." He looked at her, really looked. The confident woman in the red suit, her perfect smile now softened by gratitude and something else. "I'm just trying to fix what I can," he said. "Maybe," Grace whispered. "You're fixing more than you know." They started having coffee after his shift. Then lunches, conversations that wandered easily between work and life, grief and hope. Grace learned about Emma, about the accident, about how Ethan had left his engineering job because he couldn't stand to be around noise anymore. Ethan learned about Grace's loneliness, her fear of failing as a mother, her exhaustion from holding everything together. Somehow, two people who had lost so much began finding comfort in each other's company. The twins adored Emma. She taught them a little sign language, and soon their hands were flying through the air with meaning and laughter. Grace watched, tears often threatening as her boys slowly rediscovered joy. One spring morning, Ethan invited them all to the beach. The sky was gray, the wind sharp, but the children didn't care. They ran along the sand, collecting shells and stones. Asher was building a tower of rocks when one slipped and fell. He looked at Ethan and whispered, "Needs one more." Everyone froze. It was the first sentence he'd spoken in nearly 2 years. Grace's breath caught. "Say it again," she said gently. Asher smiled shyly. "Needs one more." Leo laughed and shouted, "I'll get it." Grace turned away, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan rested a hand on her shoulder. "They found their voices," he said softly. "They always had them," she replied. "They just needed to feel safe." Months later, Ethan brought everyone back to the same beach. The air was warmer now, the waves softer. He knelt on the sand, heart pounding, as the children stood beside him holding signs they'd painted together. "Will you marry us?" Grace gasped, eyes wide. "All of you?" she asked through tears. Ethan smiled. "All of us," she laughed, cried, and nodded all at once. "Yes, yes." "I will," the twins cheered. Emma clapped. And the 5 of them wrapped each other in a long, Joyful hug. Ethan placed a small sculpture in Grace's hands. 5 figures connected at the arms, smooth and shining. For us, he said, something to hold on to. That night, back home, the sculpture sat on their mantel beside Emma's bird and Leo's tower of stones. The children played quietly on the rug, drawing and signing. Grace stood by the window with Ethan, watching them. "We built something beautiful from broken pieces," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "We did. Together." The house was full of soft laughter and gentle clinking of tools in the next room. The sound of life, rebuilt piece by piece. Proof that sometimes healing begins not with words but with patience, kindness, and the courage to see someone exactly as they are.